I personally believe that there is a massive gap between the top three teams in the NFC and everybody else. And this might be kind of an obvious take, but I want to shine light to it because I haven't really heard about it. Like, I was thinking about it, and the NFC Championship might be set in stone, but there's only one team that can compete with the top two teams, and everybody else after that is really, really far behind. Like, it's football, anything can happen. But when you look at the completeness of these teams, to me, it's just not particularly close between the top three teams in the NFC and everybody else. There's one team that's in purgatory. That is close to being in that tier, but especially after this past week is definitely not right now. Now, it's obvious that the first two teams, 1 and 2, is Niners and the Eagles, right? And you could easily sit here and say, yeah, the NFC Championship is already set in stone, right? That fourth team that I put in purgatory as maybe not being as bad as every other team in the NFC, but definitely still not in the tier of these top three teams I'm going to talk about, is Dallas, right? They have everything, but of course, questions at the quarterback and certain things, right? That great defense got lit up by San Francisco. So you wonder, can they compete with the best of the best? But that third team is Detroit, man. They are the last team in that top tier, and everybody else follows. Detroit does not have a lot of holes. Their defense is impactful as they need it to be, with the multi-dimensional electric offense that can be methodical or explosive at any given time. Their offensive line has gelled much better. They have a great receiving core, a phenomenal running back core, and Jared Goff is playing great football, and most importantly, they are very, very well coached. Their identity is set in stone. They have it figured out. And I think that they definitely can compete with San Fran and Philadelphia. They're not better, but I will put them in that tier. And yes, it is football. Anything can happen, but they are the only reason that I sit here and say that the NFC Championship is not set in stone. If the Lions didn't exist right now, I would sit here and say, yeah, we know we're getting a Philly San Francisco rematch, but they exist. Detroit exists, and they're here. And to me, it's not just that they're an elite team, and an elite team personnel-wise. I think they're built for December, January, February. I really do think that when you look at all they can do, how good their run game is, combated with the high IQ quarterback they have in Jared Goff, an impactful defense where I think in order to have an impactful defense, you need middle pieces, but you need a pass rush first. You need pressure, right? It starts up front, of course. Everybody knows that. And what Aiden Hutchinson and company is doing is very important to the success of this Detroit Lions team at the moment. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say that their defense is as good as especially not the Niners, but not Phillies either, right? But it is definitely good enough. And more importantly, on the offensive side, it's just the multi-dimension of these teams that separates them. Other teams in this league have, especially, and I'm speaking about the NFC specifically, have great things, elite things that they do about them, right, that makes them good teams. But it's not just the fact that they can run the ball and pass the ball. It's the fact that they can do both of these things in multiple different ways. They can run the ball on the inside, they can run the ball on the outside. They have deep threats, they have possession receivers, and they have a phenomenal tight end on the inside. These are all the things you need to be an elite team. If you have these things, theoretically, there's nothing teams can do to stop your offense. You just can't really beat yourself. And of course, big time players make big time plays. You play a team like the Niners, those defensive players are going to step up and force turnover at times, right? But for the most part, there's no reason that Detroit shouldn't be able to march down the field every single possession and score. And right now, there's only two other teams that are capable of that in the NFC. And of course, top them off with their phenomenal defenses. Dallas really should be in this tier, but something's wrong with Dak and this passing scheme. And I got to dive deeper into it, but it's not looking good right now. And I just don't see their current style of play holding up given the history of Dallas in the playoffs. Because you want to be able to run the ball and you want to be able to play defense in the playoffs, which they can do, but given the decision making of their quarterback, not even the accuracy, whatever, the decision making, you have to have a quarterback that won't make mistakes to compete. And that is where it's a turnoff for me with Dallas. But you guys let me know, do you think that Detroit is good enough to compete with San Francisco and Philly? Do you think Dallas should be in that tier, or should they be with the rest of the teams? And is there any other team in the NFC that you think is good enough to compete? I personally Don't think so. I think we got 3 powerhouses and everyone else follows. And of course, a team that probably should be a powerhouse, but isn't.